What's up, Infected, and welcome to the Kwarenteen. Today we'll be taking a look at a Kickstarter expansion by the name of Antidote Lab Alliance. Now, I know what you're saying, Wolf, that's the Antidote box. Well, the box art and the card art, for that matter, are not complete and they're not final. So everything you see here is a prototype copy of the game. So that includes the box. They just sent it to me in just an Antidote box instead. So if you like what you see during this video, I'll provide a link up here in the corner once it's available, and it'll take you directly to their Kickstarter page and it'll provide way more information than I could possibly cover in this video. Now, if you don't know what Antidote is, basically you all are scientists and are all infected with a deadly disease, and you're trying to find a cure with a bunch of hidden information and secret, information flying around the table, and you're trying to make an educated guess based on what everybody else is doing to try to figure out what you think the cure is, and you're discarding cards and passing cards to the left and the right. And it's a very fun deduction game. I actually very much enjoy the base game of Antidote. Now this adds a lot more modules, I guess is the better word, that you can add to your base game of Antidote. So let's just go straight over to the overview. Now, the biggest thing that Antidote Lab Alliance adds is the ability to play with an 8th and a 9th players, and then of course comes with new symbols on the cards to compensate. And keep in mind that all the artwork is, again, prototype copy of the game, but it comes with 2 additional syringes, and then of course the base colors and symbols to be able to also allow for 8 to 9 players. The next module just enhances the existing Lab Romance cards that came with the base game, where each player will get a roll, and then one of the actions you may take will be to draw one of these and secretly look at it, which will change the endgame scoring. It just adds several more cards to shuffle in with the already existing Lab Romance cards that come with the base game. The next module that Lab Alliance adds is the actual Lab Alliance cards. That allows you to play teams. So you can play in teams of 4 if you're or teams of 2 if you're playing with 8 players, or you could do teams of 3 instead if you're playing with, say, 9 players, and which allows you to have some very interesting endgame scoring, because if I scored positive and these two scored negative, or vice versa, it's definitely going to change. So you play more of a team game with all information being open, and you're allowed to say and discuss everything, but it has to be done publicly. Now the next module is the double blind module, which is very similar to the previous team module, but instead of knowing who your teammate is, you will shuffle in a number of these based on the number of players. One player may be by themselves. You'll shuffle these up and then deal these out to the players individually, and they will secretly look at them, and then you're allowed to say whatever. So you don't really know who's on your team. The next module the game adds is the Truth Serum card. Now, the Truth Serum cards will be shuffled in with several other cards, but the way these basically work is if this card's passed to you, the next question that's asked to you must be truthful. And then the last module is the Adrenaline and Quarantine cards that can also be added to the deck. Now, the Adrenaline cards are very interesting because once this card is discarded, then everybody immediately passes X number of cards to their right, and X is equal to the number of Adrenaline cards that are already on the field. So the first time this played, it's not that big of a deal. The second time, maybe not so much of a deal still. The third time might be a big deal depending on when in the round that third one's played. The fourth one is almost definitely going to be a big deal. But then on top of that, you add in the Quarantine card, which basically makes you immune to all syringes. All right, before we continue, I'm gonna put a link right here to my Antidote review. I recommend watching that so that way the rest of this video makes more sense. But if you don't wanna watch it, spoiler alert, I do enjoy Antidote. It's such a simple game with so much going on behind the scenes. I really enjoy it. You're having to pay attention to what everybody's doing at all times and try to figure out and get into their head of why they did that, and try to figure out, okay, what color do they think the cure is, and you're trying to make educated guesses, and there's so much going on, but it's such a simple, elegant little game. So if you also watched the review, you know that I wasn't a big fan of a lot of the base game extra modules, like the expansion modules. Wasn't a big fan of them. The placebo effect was the only one that I really enjoyed. The rest of them I felt brought the game down and kind of muddled the game experience and overcomplicated it. So I was a little worried when I was sent the Lab Alliance to review, because I didn't like the modules being added because it overcomplicated the game. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go just module by module, and I'll discuss whether or not I liked it and then why. So starting with my hands down favorite part of this expansion, it is the adrenaline and quarantine markers. The quarantine markers by themselves they're alright, it just makes you immune to syringes, which whatever. But it's the adrenaline cards that are really cool in this part, because with the adrenaline markers, you're gonna have to play them, because the game ends when you only have one card in your hand, when everybody has one card. So you have to play them, and when the first time one's played, you pass a card to the right. Second time one's played, now you pass 2 cards, third and fourth, so on and so forth. And so this winds up putting a new kind of interesting twist. Do you play them early so that way you can just start building a strategy and everybody does? Or do you play them late, but then do you rig your hand that you have something that isn't the cure, because you're going to be giving it away anyways? So it winds up being adding a new really interesting layer of strategy. It's a lot of fun, and it adds it doesn't add a lot of doesn't overload it with complexity, but it's really fun. I definitely recommend adding this one. I do want to see if there's a way you can add that with the placebo. Maybe get rid of the quarantine cards, because they're okay, don't get me wrong, they are neat. But maybe instead of adding the quarantine cards, add the same number of placebo effect cards and play it that way. I think that would be just insanity. Alright, the truth serum cards. To be completely honest, we weren't a big fan of this one for multiple reasons. It's interesting because if you pass the person a card, they have to answer the next question truthfully. So we wound up having a house rule that you could only ask the one person that you pass the card to a question. And the reason for that is, if you have that guy in the group, he could, as soon as everybody passes cards, that person could just be like, hey, do you have a red X? And they can do that every time, and it's kind of annoying. And then the other thing being, I can say, okay, we're gonna pass card to the right. Even this is with the house rule. Okay, we'll pass cards to the right. Pass card to the right, I give that person a truth serum. I ask them a question, they answer it. On their turn, they go, okay, I'll pass left. They pass me it. They ask me a question, I have to answer it. And we just basically bounce that truth serum back and forth, and we both get all the information we need. And it's kind of lame, to be completely honest. It felt kind of out of place. It kind of broke what made the game fun. I don't recommend the truth serum at all. Now the team module is interesting. I'm not gonna say I recommend it or not. It is very neat. It doesn't add a lot to the game, but it doesn't take anything away. So if you're into team-based games, I mean, sure, put it in. I don't really have strong feelings for it either way. I mean, it works. I'll play with or without it. Like I said, don't have really any strong feelings. It's functional, and it's neat enough to use occasionally. Couples versus couples and stuff like that. On that note, we'll go to the double blind. This one I don't like at all. The fact that, I get what they're trying to pull with it. They're trying to pull a resistance, kind of arguing, trying to figure out what's going on. But there's no way to know for sure who your teammate is. So it's just, you're making random stabs in the dark is really all it is. So it's not really that great. I definitely don't recommend the double blind at all. And then lastly, the 8 and 9 players. I'm gonna have a caveat with this. I tried to get 8 or 9 players together to play, and I just wasn't able to due to scheduling conflict and whatnot. So I'm gonna say right now, I did not get to test play this at all with 8 or 9 players. However, with what I know from the base game, adding in an 8th and 9th player would be outstanding, and it would be really cool. It would just allow you to bring more players in with more information, and it'd be really cool. I don't know how they'll work with the expansion content and all that, but just adding this 8th and 9th player to the game, just the base game, would be really cool. Again, it just more information going around the table, and I think that would be really neat. Alright, well, the lab romance cards, I didn't like it in the first game or in the base game, so I'm just not a big fan of what it adds to this. It just adds in-game scoring stuff and generally isn't really that relevant, and there's not a lot you can do to, I mean, there is, but not a whole lot you can do to get it to trigger, and it's not great. So I mean, I don't recommend that bit. Overall, if you like Antidote, I highly recommend this. If for no other reason, those Antidote cards are super fun. We had a blast with those. And then just adding an 8th and 9th player to an already really good game. If you didn't like Antidote, this isn't going to add anything that's going to make you like Antidote. But you know, if you did like it, definitely pick it up. It's a fantastic game. Even though I didn't like most of the modules, just those two alone totally make this worth it. Those two things will add so much to the base game. Anyways, that is my review for Antidote. I hope you liked the video, and I'll see you guys next time in the quarantine.